And I believe that people with disabilities are just as capable of doing that as able-bodied people. As I do believe that it is, and pardon me for saying this, insulting to a lot of women to imply that somehow they can't manage to get an ID or they can't manage to find their birth certificate or their marriage license. I think we're all very capable of that. You know, are there going to be a few unique cases?
Bring your remarks to a close, please.
That is just some of a hearing yesterday focused on the Federal SAVE Act and what it could mean for a state like Illinois. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us here with Illinois in Focus and the Center Square on YouTube. So the Federal SAVE Act, ultimately what it does is it says that if you want to vote in a federal election, you have to prove your citizenship as new registered voters. It's already passed the U.S. House, and the U.S. Senate is considering this. In Illinois, we have very relaxed voting laws. We've got mail-in balloting en masse. We've got the ability to do permanent mail-in balloting where you can request a mail-in ballot. We've got ballot drop boxes. We've got the ability to register to vote even on election day, and local elections officials have up to 2 weeks to count ballots that are being mailed in. So a whole host of different things where you can criticize or uphold and look at Illinois' voting laws. Now, you've got to think about this kind of in a bifurcated way, right? Two lanes here. You've got federal elections for president, members of the U.S. Senate, members of the U.S. Congress. And then you've got state elections, which includes local elections. So state House, state Senate, governor, the Supreme Court justices for the state of Illinois, all the way down to your local dog catcher, right? So if the SAVE Act was to pass the U.S. Senate, get to the president's desk, and he signs it, it would only impact the federal election side of the ballot. Now, if Illinois did not comply with that SAVE Act, they would probably have to have 2 different ballots or something to that effect, right? It may also confuse voters, wondering why they're getting 2 separate ballots. But that's if Illinois doesn't comply with that and just make it uniform that you have to prove citizenship in order to be a registered voter. So that measure is moving through U.S. Congress. And yesterday, late in the day, they started probably like 2 hours late or something. The Illinois House Elections and Ethics Committee. They met to discuss the SAVE Act and what it could mean for a state like Illinois. And you can see this story from Jim Talamonte at the Center Square. Illinois lawmakers debate federal voter legislation along with Illinois bills. And they brought it up. And the chairman of the House Elections and Ethics Committee, Maurice West, laying out what the subject matter hearing was about.
We have testimony concerning the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is an initiative coming from the President Trump a couple of weeks ago, sharing that an executive order could be in place. One of the things, the 3 benchmarks of our elections here in the state of Illinois are focused around security, accessibility, and fairness. And in my opinion as the chair, the fact that elections has its own standalone committee in this chamber and not in the Senate, it's incumbent of us to ensure that we are being proactive rather than reactive of what's to come. So
what is to come, right? It's a good question. The measure was supported by Carrie Tolotsko with Election Integrity Network, and she was testifying virtually about the things that she says are important to consider as somebody who supports requiring federal elections to require the proof of citizenship. Here she is yesterday talking to the committee.
Mechanism for attesting that a new registrant is a U.S. citizen and eligible to vote is a small checkbox on a federal postcard voter registration form. What the NVRA did not include in 1993 was a mechanism for proof that the registrant is a U.S. citizen. That is simply what the SAVE Act does. Those of us who have concerns about non-citizen voting are also often told, well, it's already illegal, so no need for the SAVE Act. The 3 most common crimes in the United States are theft, assault, and drug trafficking. They are all against the law, just like non-citizen voting, but they still happen. It is no different from non-citizens voting. A law by itself doesn't prevent a whole lot.
And we see that, like she said, burglary and murder and so on. So why not just take that extra step to have a requirement that you have to prove citizenship in order to vote in federal elections? She continues on to really lean into the idea of that really protects non-citizens in the country, because some of them may be confused when local clerks hand them certain documents when they're registering for this or registering for that.
Perhaps you honestly think, and I think this happens very, very often, that residency means you can vote. This is not a ridiculous assumption for a new resident to think. A government clerk hands you a postcard and says, check this box if you want to register to vote, and you say, oh, of course I do. In July of 2024, a change in Illinois state law now allows not just non-citizens, but illegal immigrants, undocumented migrants, whatever word you like, to obtain driver's licenses. The Social Security Administration provides Social Security numbers to non-citizens who are here lawfully, as well as we know as to those who are here unlawfully. So what do you need to register in Illinois to vote? A driver's license in the last 4 of your social. Surely we see the problem, and surely it worries all of you as it worries us. And surely you want to make sure that you are protecting the ballots of your constituents back in your districts, and this is a foremost priority. So let's talk about unlawful voters and what could happen to them when they vote. We have a meme we often use in our non-citizen voting discussions. It says, protect non-citizens, don't let them vote. We are not kidding. We really mean it, and we really hope you feel that way too.
So you got to think about that. If a non-citizen votes, it's against the law, and they could be finding themselves with a one-way ticket out of the country. So the idea of protecting non-citizens from breaking the law, ensure they can't register to vote. State Representative Katie Stewart, Democrat from the Edwardsville area, I believe, she opposes the Federal SAVE Act, and she says it's going to disenfranchise voters.
The SAVE Act would require that if to request a vote by mail application, to make an in-person request of that application. To me, that is completely nonsensical and is going to disenfranchise people with disabilities. I believe people with disabilities should be able to vote, and I think that the SAVE Act would take away that ability. I think we all know that it will very much disenfranchise many women, especially. Many women have changed their names. I am one of those women. I happen to have a real ID and a passport because I do travel. I have children that live in other parts of the country, and I visit them, and I would hope to also travel overseas at other times. But I have an 85-year-old mother-in-law who she's been Sandy Stewart for as long as she can probably remember, but that's not her birth name. Her birth certificate does not match her ID. She would not be able to vote. You're going to disenfranchise my 85-year-old mother-in-law with this act. Thanks.
Well, I assume that your 85-year-old mother-in-law is already registered to vote. The SAVE Act applies to new registrants, not previous registrants. And
if my mother-in-law were to move, she would lose her ability to be a registered voter.
As far as, of course, everyone wants people with disabilities to vote. No one is going to pass a federal law that blocks that. Within the SAVE Act...
This act, in its stance right now, does that to people with disabilities.
The SAVE Act very specifically and deliberately gives the power to the states, just like in your Constitution that says the General Assembly can make registration guidelines, to give you, in Illinois, the ability to write those laws of registration the way you want them. So if you want people to vote, to register online, you can do that. If you want to have people register by telephone somehow into your boards, you can do that. They only have to provide proof of citizenship, and I believe that people with disabilities are just as capable of doing that as able-bodied people. As I do believe that it is, and pardon me for saying this, insulting to a lot of women to imply that somehow they can't manage to get an ID, or they can't manage to find their birth certificate or their marriage license. I think we're all very capable of that. You know, are there going to be a few unique cases?
You're going to bring your remarks to a close, please?
Yes. There may be a few cases that is a challenge for. I mean, in any law, there's always an outlier, but by and large, it does not disenfranchise anyone at all. And
So
again,
well, that debate's going to continue, and we'll be watching that as well. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us here with the Center Square on YouTube each and every weekday morning. Get the news clips, get these show segments, and get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus. Don't forget, sign up for that newsletter at thecentersquare.com.